So what's your favorite part about Leadville?
The history.
Run this 100 miles. Are you ready? Hey, are you ready? You're gonna have to dig deep and keep digging.
Trail I go, swinging, singing all the old cat tunes I know.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm Andrew Simmons with Lifelong Endurance, conducting the interview back here. To your left, you got Lexi, and you got Kaitlyn Morgan, and we're going to talk a little bit about some successes, some failures, really relating to the most recent event that our team has seen, which is the Leadville Trail 100. Both of you guys finished that event. Lexi, you want to share how that race went, just in a brief overview for us?
Absolutely. It was my first 100, my first race over 50 miles. To be honest, I'd only run 150 previously. So it was me kind of deviating from my typical road marathon trajectory. It did not go as I had planned, but I still finished. I still had a great time. I enjoyed the scenery and learned a lot of lessons about ultra running.
Yeah, for sure. But good day nonetheless.
Always.
Awesome. Caitlin, share a little bit. This is your second Leadville, right?
This was my second Leadville, third 100-mile attempt. I just absolutely love Leadville, so how can you not run it? My day did not go according to plan either. There's probably about 30 miles to go. I was unable to eat food, and it became a test of beginning to keep just moving forward. That mental thought of, I gotta just keep moving forward. Had some great little milestones ahead of me placed, so I knew I had to get to certain people. But overall, I couldn't be happier with how I did, considering stomach turned.
So I think the first thing that everybody's going to ask a question about comes down to preparation. And when you guys look back on the last couple of months of your prep, what would you guys say that's been key to your preparation? Is it the long days out in the mountains? Is it the hard workouts that you're putting in during the week? Where do you see that most of the money's going in the bank?
I would say the key to preparation for me was definitely the time on feet, being up in the mountains for 6 or 7 hours, getting a lot of vert, spending all day eating, running, walking, slogging through the hills, and just learning to deal with the sun and food issues.
Yeah, for sure. Kaitlyn, how about yourself?
I'm going to kind of piggyback off of Lexi with, a lot of what I found really beneficial in training was doing the long weekends. And then doing those long days, maybe not up in the high country, but out in the heat, times you don't want to run. You wake up early thinking, yeah, I'm going to run, and then you put it off for 2 hours. Go out and run then when it's hot and you're sticky and you're gross. I was able to really push through a lot of fueling and figure out what my body was going to do once it started to get really hot outside.
So both of you are coaches, both of you coach athletes that race ultra distance. What do you think most people miss in their training for this race in particular? Now that you guys have run it, you've seen it, you've experienced it, and not just coaching it from the backside of a computer, what do you guys think that most people miss in this, or what do you feel like you would have changed?
I would say most athletes probably miss the mental game that goes into going over Hope Pass twice. I know that was a struggle for myself, and I already knew it was coming. People who aren't doing that out and back or aren't practicing being uncomfortable and being unhappy for long days might not be learning how to push through and stay positive.
Probably again with Lexi on that is training the mental aspect of the race. We're gonna have some lows, and mentally think about what those lows might be and when they might come and how you might mentally react to them or physically. If you're going to take a bite of one of your favorite foods to give yourself a pick-me-up, things like that. I think that's stuff that gets missed. Along with running on terrain that's similar to the course, Leadville is super runnable, and have heard tales of people who decided to walk the flats and missed cutoffs. And I think running on the type of terrain you're going to see in the race is going to be really beneficial. You can do a lot on this course.
So, curveball question, but I think it's worth asking. So a lot of athletes come out to this race, and they don't live at 6,000 feet where we are right now. They don't have access to some amazing trails in their backyard. That Hope Pass is in a 2.5-hour drive from your front door. So for that sea-level athlete, just share one thing, even off the top of your head, that you might take away or give to them and say, this is a crucial thing to incorporate in your training, even if you're in Omaha, Nebraska.
I would say for a sea-level athlete or for even a Colorado athlete who's trying to train in the winter, getting on that treadmill and having that incline set as high as it can go and practicing the power walking uphill. It's boring. It's one of the most boring workouts there is, but it's going to get you ahead of the game.
I think one of the best things people from sea level or training where they don't have mountains in their backyard is get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable in a workout. Do things that you're not likely going to do, and really put your body not under a whole ton of stress, but put your body under some stress. Heat is great to kind of mimic altitude. I wouldn't recommend it all the time, but yeah, go out for a few runs when it's hot and it's muggy and you don't want to do it. Because when you get to Hope Pass, it's going to actually feel a little bit easier.
Yeah, Hope Pass is definitely the crux of that race. I think if you can get over it, and you can get into that next aid station, it kind of seems like a breeze. I mean, power line is definitely its own little thing, but I think you kind of mentally, if you hit power line, you're like, I'm going to do this thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So one of the questions that was actually asked from some people outside was better understanding, how do you have the energy to run that far? And I think this is just kind of a general ultra running question. But the reality is what is your nutrition strategy? And even if it didn't go as you had planned for your own personal race, what do you usually share with your athletes for a race that's a 100-mile race? Do you feel differently than a marathon? So question is, what is your nutrition strategy for Leadville?
I would say the most important nutrition strategy for any race is practicing what you're going to eat beforehand. For me, it was sweet potatoes and rice balls. I had tons of them in my refrigerator and practiced almost every run, even if it was short, just trying to get some food in me. Of course, that didn't pan out in the race, and I wasn't able to eat from mile 13 to 88. But at the same time, then having that mental game to know that I could keep pushing through, that telling myself I was tough enough to do this without that nutrition, and that things would be okay.
Nice.
I think for 100-mile races, especially to keep your energy up, is you've just got to constantly be putting fuel into the tank. My strategy is about every half hour, every 45 minutes, I'm eating a gel, I'm eating a few chews. I try and eat a waffle. I understand they're hard to get down, but try and take a bite. If something's hard to get down, take a bite, take a sip, move on. And my thing was, you got to have a constant drip of nutrition going in and a constant drip of electrolytes, and that creates a good balance. Don't overdo the electrolytes like I did during Leadville, and you actually will be able to run the last 30 miles.
Yeah, I think as a coach myself, when working with athletes that are doing 100-mile distances, I think there's a lot to balance in there, but also there's a certain amount of feeding that, like, if you see it and it looks good,
eat it,
right? Like, I think there's a whole lot to be said for that. And I mean, barring any like nutritional restrictions that you may have, that if it looks good, go for it, because your eyes are your stomach in a lot of ways. And I've been in plenty of races where it's like, I don't want to eat another gel, it's just the thought of it. So changing that up can be such a huge boost, and even giving yourself some food that is special. Saving that, I'm going to get that Kit Kat at mile 80. That can be such a morale boost that I think that's really important. Cool. So we're going to talk a little bit less about you guys and a little bit more about the team that supported you guys. And I think crewing is such a important part of ultra running. But it is, of course, all of the behind-the-scenes work that happens, both from a preparation standpoint, but also the moments when they've got you in the chair there and they have those 5 minutes to be pivotal and important and give you this great life advice for the next 20 miles. So that considered, what advice would you give to somebody who's going to be assembling a crew, maybe even not for Leadville, but just 100-mile races? Do you want to assemble a group of your friends? Do you want to assemble a group of people that are going to give you, real life at mile 80? What kind of people do you want to surround yourself with for a race like this?
For me, assembling the crew, I just really chose some of the most amazing, gnarly chicks that I knew who were going to inspire me to go farther. All of them are like amazing athletes on their own and people I really respect. And I just knew that having them by my side and seeing them at an aid station where I was going to be struggling was going to motivate me to push harder, just because they're incredible. And I think with my crew itself, they were organized. They were people that had empathy and compassion for me. And I had, I didn't want to let them down. Of course, you're running this race for yourself, but when, the plan kind of hit the fan at mile 64, I didn't want to give up because I didn't want to let down these people who had spent all day waiting for me.
How about yourself?
Picking my crew has actually been fairly easy. My mom volunteers to do it, and she's awesome because she will not let anything come between her daughter and that finish line. So she's timely. She gets to aid stations like an hour early. She's really organized. She helps with my pace chart and she memorizes my pace chart. And then she writes down when I come in and when I leave. And when assembling a crew, I look for people that are similar. Really, I guess the word is type A people that are going to be worrying about you as much as you're worrying about getting to them. And then as soon as you sit down in the chair, they're going to start taking off your shoes. They're going to start feeding you. They're going to start changing you. Man, it sounds like taking care of a child.
It does. Well, really.
It really is. It really is. But you want a crew that knows how to just innately take care of you without you having to say, I need this.
Right.
They've got you.
Right.
And you trust them.
So I think blessing and curse is the old crew, the pacing sheet, right? Because it's a Bible.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes I think the biggest thing when it comes to crewing is being adaptable. You have to have a group of people that, like you said, will get there an hour early, but then just as easily wait for another hour when you may not be on your A goal that day, and they're sitting there and they're waiting. So when that's starting to come into play, and we talk about pacers, what's some great advice that you've received on the trail?
One thing that a pacer said to me, and it's probably one of my favorite things anyone's ever said, I realized I wasn't going to hit my A goal. I kind of had a little bit of a meltdown, and she said, "Can you cry and run at the same time right now?" And I was like, I guess I can, yeah. And so it was just kind of that, it was just funny enough to keep me moving, and it was real. I couldn't waste time, mourning the fact that I wasn't going to do as well as I had hoped. I had to get moving.
Yeah.
I look for pacers that are going to be really motivational, and I think some of the best advice, I can't remember all of it. I remember one of my pacers, the first Leadville, I tried to stop to adjust my pack, and he deadpan looked at me and he said, "There's no stopping in Leadville." And I had 13 miles to go. I panicked. We were under a time crunch, and I was like, okay, clipped my vest shut and kept running, and I don't think I really stopped moving because I knew he was going to turn around and yell at me if I did. And so I've kind of kept that mantra this year of there's no stopping. When you want to stop, keep running. When you want to, run, don't want to run, keep running, things like that.
Yeah.
Things you don't want to do them.
Yeah, I think a lot of ultra running is do the thing you don't want to do, which goes back to some bigger motivations of why do we even do it in the first place. But hey, it's a wonderful sport. So let's see here. Last set of questions. I know it's getting a little hot out here. So the DNF, the dreaded DNF, which I think, this race, Leadville itself, the Leadville 100, has on average a 50% DNF race, which, you add up the factors, right? Whether it's a hot day, which this year was not particularly hot. You could say crowding. This year was not the most athletes they've ever had on the course.
No.
So you add up all those things and say, okay, so why do we see a 50% race? Is it the fact that it's at 10,000 feet? Is it the fact that it's just 100 miles? And so as you start to kind of think about these factors for Leadville, whether they have a coach or they don't have a coach, we've talked a little bit about training and waxing and waning about some of the specifics there. If you're talking to somebody that DNF'd, what's the first thing that you're gonna say to them? Whether it's right after the race, or having experienced a DNF, yourselves, how did you guys get over that initial feeling of I totally let myself and everybody that showed up to support me down?
So with DNFs, I look at it like grieving. You can grieve a lot of different things. I think we always grieve a little bit after a race anyway because we're done training. So giving yourself that space to have those emotions, knowing that those emotions are valid. You don't need to put on a brave face and tell everyone congratulations right away. Of course you want to be a good sport, but have your time, mourn what happened. You trained hard and it didn't work out. That's a big deal, and whatever you're feeling is valid. After that, I would say give yourself a little bit of time and then move on. You have other goals, and that race isn't going anywhere most likely. Like, you can run it a different year and you're going to get your goal. You have it in you. Just be patient and kind with yourself.
What would you say, Kaitlyn?
Similar to that, with that, it is a little bit of a grieving process having DNF'd 100 mile before. I learned that you kind of let that emotion sit with you, kind of understand that, yeah, it happens. And then the one phrase that we hear time in and time out for 100 milers is anything can happen in 100 miles. It's not a given race like a 5K. It's not a given race even like a marathon. You're doing 4 marathons back to back, and anything can happen between any one of those given marathons. So kind of giving yourself a little bit of grace. That grace of, hey, maybe I didn't do something really well, but that's okay, because now I've learned for next time. Use it as learning opportunities. And like Lexi said, Leadville's not going anywhere. I don't see it going anywhere for the foreseeable future. So, write down what happened, write down what you've learned mainly, and put it to use for the next 100. Maybe try something else on a different terrain. Keep experimenting and switching it up.
Yeah, I think as I coach more and more athletes, and DNFs happen. It's not a reflection of the athlete, it's not a reflection of the coach.
Absolutely not.
It happens. And I think what athletes have to understand is, like, if it was an injury or that was the best effort you had for that day, you've got to know that you gave 100%, and some of those things you can control. Some of these things are out of your control. But if you can't get to the point where you say, oh, I learned something, I can walk away with new information, you still have some work to do, and it's okay. It's okay to be in that process for a long time. Cool. So, specifically, question for Kaitlyn. So, last year you coached 4 athletes with 4 finishes. There's a big buckle in there and plenty of sub 30-hour finishers. Do you feel like, having been a coach for this race and then now going back and running it, do you feel like you were able to walk away with a different perspective of how you were going to tackle this race?
I think I went in with a little bit different perspective, having seen it from, I guess, the other side of the lens of having coached it and working with athletes from big buckle all the way down to 29:58 or whatever that time was. Seeing the progression and knowing that what really got a lot of people through the hard stuff was a positive mindset. I paced one of my athletes, and the joke was to catch him not smiling, and that was a really hard thing to do. And I know one of my other athletes on the top of power line, everything locked up, but he didn't quit and he kept moving forward. And seeing the positive faces coming down Hope Pass, you could just tell that they knew they were going to finish because they were so positive. Right. And I took that in running Leadville this year, like, if things get hard, if things hit the fan, I'm going to smile my way through it and say it's going to be okay, because regardless of a time goal, I'm out there to really just enjoy what the 100-mile journey is.
Right on. So, last but not least, both of you guys are coaches, I'm a coach. What value do you think that when you're looking at a 100-mile race, you can go get a plan online, you can, sign up any other place, but why you? So why would someone want to sign up to work with you? What makes coaching with lifelong endurance different, better? What's the experience that you guys bring? We believe here that the mission is best version of yourself. How do you guys feel that you guys lead forward with that?
I would say with myself in coaching and what I bring to an athlete is being able to meet them where they're at. Not every day is going to be perfect, and training can be really complicated and difficult, especially if you're running your first ultra. It's a big, scary thing, and I like being with the clients throughout the whole journey, making sure that they're getting those workouts, making sure everything's feeling okay, and then being with them in the race day. Supporting them in whatever emotional needs they need during that time of change and excitement.
Nice. All right, Kaitlyn, if you'd like to share.
I think having a coach and the way that I approach coaching for 100-mile races, ultras, trails, whatever it is I want the athlete to have enthusiasm about what they're doing. If there's no enthusiasm there, then we got to answer the question, why the heck are you running? Yeah. And I like bringing out that enthusiasm, because that also breeds joy. And when you have a really tough day, it really does play to your mental side. And I like helping my athletes with that mental factor, as well as creating workouts that are structured to their life. Some are parents, some need certain days off, some need more days off than you would like, but being able to be flexible with them and provide them with the structure they need is really beneficial.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I think you guys both bring such a huge, vast knowledge, both from experience standpoint, but also from the number of athletes that you guys have coached over the years. So really appreciate you guys sharing your Leadville journeys with us, and until next year.